Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Revit Cloud Collaboration Best Practice and Lessons Learned webinar. We're very excited you join us today to have our Alan Birmacher, Customer Success Manager, to give us a tour to the Revit Cloud work sharing process and give us tips and tricks for attaining cloud collaboration success. Before we jump in, I want to go through a few logistics. So, as usual, all attendees will be muted during the presentation, and we would like you to send us your questions via the chat box so you can write them there, and we will answer at the end of the webinar. Please do so. Any questions you have about the subject. This webcast will be recorded for future viewing. And if you have any questions during and after the presentation, you can call us or email us at info@ddscat.com. Without any more delay, it is my pleasure again to introduce you to Alan Birmacher, our Customer Success Manager, to give us all the goodies about this topic. Alan, take it away.
Hey, thank you so much, Raquel. All right, everybody, welcome. We're very excited to have you here with us today for this presentation. There's a lot to cover and not a lot of time, so I will be moving a little quickly. We're going to be jumping around quite a bit. So, as we go here, definitely remember to send us questions as they come up in the chat box, and we'll be jumping back to those at the end. Okay, so today, just kind of brief, high level here, we're going to be covering what is the Autodesk Construction Cloud. Autodesk Construction Cloud / BIM 360 project list and how to access that. And then we're going to go section by section. So account administration, project administration, document management tips, design collaboration tips, Revit desktop tips, and a question and answer session at the end. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So what is the Autodesk Construction Cloud? So the Autodesk Construction Cloud is a single platform that will bring together multiple building processes into one core platform. The ACC is basically broken into multiple modules. The core modules that will be used during the design phase are docs and design collaboration primarily, and that's what we're going to be focusing on in the presentation today. And we see that circled here in blue. And okay, so the first thing I want to kind of talk about a little bit here, and an area of confusion for a lot of people is, what is the Autodesk Construction Cloud? I used to know what BIM 360 was, what is this? So BIM 360 still exists. It's just kind of being phased out and replaced with the Autodesk Construction Cloud. Now that's going to be a gradual process that's going to happen over time. But basically the important part is the new platform is called the Autodesk Construction Cloud. It does very similar stuff to what BIM 360 used to do. But this is the new platform. BIM 360 still exists, and with your licensing that you'll use for the Construction Cloud, you will still retain access to those BIM 360 projects. But again, it is the outgoing technology in a sense. Okay. All right. So the next topic to discuss here is licensing. Okay. So the Construction Cloud basically uses what's called a bring your own license model. And specifically for the BIM Collaborate Pro license, which is this icon here. And so I kind of wanted to show you guys what that looks like here. So this is you down here, okay? You're the user. You work for Company A. Company A has their projects that they host within their company site, if you will. And that BIM Collaborate Pro license is also coming from your company. Now with that license, you're able to collaborate on projects with Company C, Company B here in this example, and bring that license with you, right? So you're able to collaborate on projects on other companies' sites or that other companies host, but with the license that you are bringing, so they don't have to, provide a license for you or anything of that nature. And again, so the license basically that you'll need for that sort of co-authoring on Revit is what's called BIM Collaborate Pro. And essentially, again, you will bring that license with you. Okay. So jumping from there, let's talk a little bit about what the Autodesk Construction Cloud account is versus projects. So every company basically that will sign up or that will purchase licenses for the platform is going to have what's called an ACC account. This used to be called a hub on BIM 360. It's also been called a site. Different terminology, it all means the same thing. It's the umbrella that your company has that your projects live inside of. So you can see here in this example, your company has its account. The account has many projects underneath it. Like we saw in the previous slide, you can invite external people to your projects that you host. And other companies will have their own accounts, also, out in the cloud, and they will be able to host their own projects as well. Okay, so we see those here. Again, this is just a visual representation, but it's just to gain a good understanding of what that looks like. Now, beyond that, in the actual, let's say, project structure itself, as I mentioned, in this case, what we're really going to focus on is the Autodesk Docs section and the design collaboration kind of pieces here. So again, looking at a visual representation, we have our account or hub kind of level here. Inside, we see here 3 projects, and each of those projects will have its own docs section and its own design collaboration section. Now, this docs section is important to know, is where all your documents are going to live. So no matter what modules you enable in your project, the Autodesk Construction Cloud requires that you start with docs. Docs is where all your documents live. Think about it like a Dropbox, Google Drive, something like that. And then all the other modules manipulate documents that are stored in that docs layer. And so each of these are stored by project in your account or hub. Okay, so those are all treated as completely independent, if you will. All right, so let's get into the more hands-on demonstrative portion of things here. So in order to access your ACC/BIM 360 project list, you're going to go to this website. It's going to be acc.autodesk.com. And essentially what that is going to be your unified platform here, or your unified project platform. So let's go ahead and refresh this page. So that is this page here. You can see acc.autodesk.com. And so here I want to point out a couple of things. So at the bottom here, you're going to see a couple of different projects here. These are all projects that we have created. And essentially, this is going to be your list for all projects from the Construction Cloud and from that prior BIM 360 platform that I mentioned to you as well. A lot of people have active projects in that platform, and that is not a problem. You can continue to use those projects, and you can find those all in the same list here so that you can easily find which project is which. One thing worth pointing out here is that you see this icon here on the left side. There's a little globe on the first one, a B on the second line here, and then another globe. The globe projects are the ones that are actually Construction Cloud projects, and the B is the one that's the BIM 360 based projects. So that's an easy way to know which is which right here. Okay. You can also see here a project templates tab. We're going to talk about project templates in just a moment, so we'll jump back to that. But also, if you're an account administrator, up on the top right side here, you're going to see you have an account administrator button. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and click into that account admin. And this is going to take us to our account administration section. All right. Okay. And so there's a lot of different things that can be done from this area. And so let's, jump into a few of them. So right here, you got your project list. You can create your projects. I'm not going to harp on this too much. That's a little bit more on the basic side. And if you're interested in any of that, we can help you get up and running on those things as well. But I'm going to focus a little more on the, kind of the lessons learned that we discussed, right? So project templates. What is a project template in this case? So a project template basically allows you to create exactly what it says, a project template that includes files, folders, permissions, users, all preset already, so that you can create projects from that existing template. That's a really nice feature because, in a lot of cases, you're going to start from the same building blocks, right, before you start working on a project. And so this gives you the ability not to have to do that initial work more than once. You can create a variety of different project templates so that if you have different sorts of projects, you can start those from, from a variety of different templates. And so let's go ahead and click on here. And so you'll see that when you're creating those templates, you can create that from total scratch, or you can create it from an existing project, which is nice as well, because if you already have a project up and running that is in that format that you're looking for, there you go. Use this. You don't have to do that work again, like I just mentioned. Okay, let's go ahead and cancel that, confirm. All right, and so here we see this archive tab, right? So let's go ahead and click on there, and I want to talk about something else. So on the Construction Cloud and on BIM 360, in the majority of cases, I would say there is no ability to delete things permanently, okay? So that's, I've been told it's due to legal requirements and a variety of things, but essentially what it comes down to is so that, you know, history can't be deleted completely. So in many cases, you're not able to permanently delete. You can archive documents. That's the case here for projects, for project templates, for files, for example, in your project. And so essentially, you can archive them. They stay in almost like a trash can type situation where you can bring those back if you'd like to. You can restore them at a later date, but they cannot be permanently deleted. There are a few exceptions here and there within the platform, but the majority of archives, documents, things like that can only be archived, not deleted. So that's something worth noting. All right, next thing here. Let's go to the libraries tab right here. So I'm not going to talk about this too much, but basically the libraries can be used to create forms, parameters, costs, things of that nature. And essentially, this is something that you can, again, configure in one location. You can add these items that you're creating to your existing projects, to your existing project templates. And if you see that there's a change that needs to be made later, you can actually go in and, again, just update this in one place, and it will update it throughout, you know, wherever that that specific item is used, I suppose is the best way to say that. Okay. And so again, it lets you publish those updates basically to multiple locations all at one time, saving you money, saving you effort, and of course that's ideal. So I'm just going to touch on apps real quick here. There is this app section that you can use to basically enable a variety of plugins, if you will, into the hub or the Autodesk Construction Cloud site that you have here, your account. We're not going to get into those today, but there's a whole slew of different things that you can enable here for integrations. All right, let's go to our settings area. And so here we're going to see a couple of very useful pieces of information. So first, you'll have this edit button here, which actually will allow you to change your account name. Keep in mind that, you know, this has to change in a lot of places. So when the change occurs, we have seen some cases where a user may not see that change immediately on the computer, but they should see it, you know, after a little bit of time has passed. And any new users should see that change. But it does happen sometimes that those stay a little stuck, so keep that in mind. Another thing I want to mention here is what's called here the account ID. So this used to be called a site ID on the BIM 360 side. Now it's called an account ID. But essentially, this is the ID beyond just a name that identifies your site. This is important to keep track of in case, you know, of renewals or different things. If anybody ever asks you for a site ID for support, this is that site ID. So just come back here and refer to that. All right. And so now I want to go ahead and jump to this BIM 360 admin button here. So this is going to give us links to the BIM 360 administrative side of things. Okay. A lot of this is going to be similar stuff to what we're seeing here, but one kind of unique thing is this analytics button. So let's go ahead and click on that. And so that's going to give us some interesting info. So this is going to tell us when our site is set to expire, how many months it has left until that time of expiration, how many active members. On the right side here, you'll see the various licenses that you may have activated and how many users are using out of your total count of licenses. Also some analytics data such as, you know, project types, things of that nature. So again, good analytical data, but the important thing here that we see people are looking for often is this, you know, just how much time you have left until the end of your term, okay? All right, one other thing I want to point out real quick here. So you see here on this very top bar, there's this Autodesk Construction Cloud logo, and it's a navy bar in the back. Okay, so remember, we're on the BIM 360 side that we jumped to here. If we go back to the Construction Cloud side, you see how this is gray here instead of navy? That's one very easy way to see whether you're in the Construction Cloud side or whether you're on the BIM 360 side, is that bar is either navy for BIM 360 or gray for the construction cloud. All right, so let's close out of here. And so let's go back to this unified project list, and let's go ahead and jump into a project here. And so I have our sample project 2023. That's the one that we're going to jump into first here. And so that's going to throw us into the project administration area for this site, or for this project, I apologize. So first thing I want to cover real quick here is adding members. Now this is a little bit different than it was on the BIM 360, and that's why I wanted to touch on it here. So we'll make sure we're in our members section. We'll click add member. I'm actually using another user that I created just for this case. So I'm actually going to go ahead and add myself here just for the example. So you can start typing the user. If the user doesn't exist, they won't come up on this list. But if you just finish typing out the email, it'll just have them here like this, and they'll be added. If you've already been added to other projects and things like that, you'll actually be able to choose from this suggested list that will pop up down here. Okay. Next, you're going to select your company for that person. You'll be able to select other companies that have been used for other various projects, or you can just say assign from account admin. When you create a user on the project level, it does create them up at the very next level up, which is your account. And so it will actually remember some of that information. And so intelligently, it can automatically associate it to the correct company when you add a new user. Roles, very much the same thing. Roles, we don't see used a ton, to be honest with you, but those can be used for, you set somebody up with a certain role, and you can have that automatically trigger certain permissions and things like that for those users. We see more often than not permissions and things of that nature based on teams or companies themselves rather than on individual roles. But again, depending on the way you want to set this thing up, it can go either way. That's one nice thing, is the flexibility that exists here. There's a lot of options and possibilities, and so you can really make it what you'd like. Then here you have your project member or project admin option. You can choose which of those two are what you're looking for there. So we'll leave it for members. And then at the very bottom, you'll be able to choose what modules you'd like to enable for that user. Now, like I mentioned, if you assign that design collaboration module and that user is being invited from an external company and already has one of those licenses, they bring that license with them. You're not responsible for giving them that license. And again, like I mentioned, Docs is always going to be included. That's your building block. Insight is almost like a project homepage, also automatically included, but we're enabling the design collaboration module here. Now, you'll see some additional modules here that you may or may not see on your side. And that's because I have access to certain licenses here that some of you may not, but depending what licenses you've purchased, that's the modules that you're going to have access to here. Okay, so let's go ahead and add my user here. And so that does sometimes take a couple of minutes before that user will show up. So let's go ahead and refresh the page here and see if we see that yet. Okay, so here I am. I also want to point out, when you click on a user on the right side here, again, you can modify the company, the role, the access level, and the modules that are enabled. Looks like the modules didn't go through and enable yet. There they are now, okay? And for deleting users, you would click on them and click on the three dots up here and say remove member, okay? All right, so let's look at a couple other things here. So let's go to the settings tab here, or the settings button here. Again, we're in the project administration area. So very much like in the account level, this is where you can go to edit project details that you might have entered when you began the project initially. You can go in and change those here. Another interesting thing you can do in the settings here that I do get asked about fairly often is the notifications. So there are a variety of different things that can be used here within the project, and you can set up how often you're notified about those things, who is notified. You can turn off notifications for certain members altogether down here. And so that's all from this view here, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and jump over to our docs section now, and I'm gonna show you what that looks like. We're gonna do that by clicking up here on this project admin button here. This is what's called the module switcher. Used to be called a variety of things. At some point, I think they called it the hamburger. It looked like a little hamburger icon up there on the BIM 360. But essentially, that's what you click on to go to the different modules. So let's go over to Docs now, and we'll take a look right here. And so like I mentioned, Docs is going to be that basic building block that stores all your documents. And Docs can handle most file types. That's a good piece of information. It's grown over time. A couple of years ago, it was 100+ different file types that could be stored in Docs. Now it's many, many more. Not all of them can be viewed within Docs, but at least for file storage, that will work. So one thing I do want to touch on real quick here is folder permissions. So let's look at this architectural folder here. You see these 3 little dots right here. So if you click on that, this is going to be some options for this folder. Now, one option that's great to touch on here is add subfolder. If you wanted to add a folder underneath this folder, kind of inside it, you would do that from here. Renaming, sharing, any of those sorts of things, that can all be done from here. And what I wanted to touch on here specifically was permission settings. So by default, users that are added, unless they are administrators, like you see here, Jaime and I are both admins here, don't have access to anything in the project structure, in the file structure. You need to explicitly grant permission to those users to have access. Now, the exception to that is if there's a team that they're invited to and that team has access. But again, innately, without doing that extra step, they don't have initial access to anything. What that does is it actually allows you to give access only to the things that those individuals should be seeing. So you can have various consultants, for example, working here with you, and only give them visibility to what you want them to have visibility to, which is a nice tool. And so in order to add, for example, myself here and give myself some visibility, you click add. You can actually add individuals here by name or by email address, or you can add roles or companies. And so anybody in that role or that company will automatically get permission to this folder. So let's say we wanted to add the whole DDS CAD company that I have here. So I would say DDS CAD ACC. You would select the permissions level depending what you want them to do. Let's say edit permission level, and we say add. And so you'll see here now the company is here. If we open this flyout, it will show everybody who's in there. So including myself and then including the 2 admin users as well. Okay, and that is one that we run into often with people being invited to a project, not seeing files. This is often the cause of that. Okay, so as I mentioned, we have our architecture folder here. So we see a model here, right? This is a cloud model. This is our basic sample project. And so before I actually open that up, I wanted to point out a couple of things. So you see here we have a version column, and we see V8 here. So let's go ahead and click on that version 8. And so here you can see some good info here. So you have your version 8, version 7, 6, 5, 3, and I'll explain why that is in a moment. But for each of these, you can go ahead and copy. You can go ahead and download that version, right? So if there's a prior version that you want to go back to or that you needed to have access to for some reason, this is where that's done from. And on the right side, something interesting, you can make any of these prior versions current, right? So if you superseded something, you decided, oh no, I don't want that to be the latest thing, I need to see something earlier, you can go ahead and make that version current. It'll keep its version number and show it at the very top of this list. And then when you supersede it with another publish, and we'll talk about the publishing and how that works in just a couple minutes here, the next version will be a new version number. It won't override an existing version, so all that history remains. And you can see that here. So here we got to version 4. I decided, you know what, let me go back to version 3. We did that here. And then when we published a new version, we got to version 5. And so that's a nice tool there as well. So let me show you one more thing here before I open the file itself. And so we have this compare versions button down here. Okay, and if we click on that, you can actually choose multiple versions to compare. So let's grab the most recent, and let's do like the version 3 down here and say compare. And so you're going to be able to choose what view it is. So let's choose the same view for both and the version here from this list, and we can click compare. And hopefully everything works because we are doing this live. So let's see here what happens. All right, so here we can see a live representation of our model. And so what we can see here on the right side is we have 3 items that were added from revision 3 to revision 8 and 5 that were removed. right? And you can actually enable and disable, kind of toggle on or off the highlighting of those here. You can see when things have been modified as well. There wasn't anything specifically modified there, and that's why you're not seeing that. And down here, you can actually see all of those items individually called out. So for example, if we wanted to check out an individual solar panel that was removed, we can click on it. It will highlight it. It will give you some information about it. And so we can click into another one. We can click into one of these wind generators. And again, it'll go around highlighting and pointing each of those out. Additionally, if we click on one of these, it'll do the same thing. It'll highlight it here on this list, so we do know exactly what it is. Okay, so that's a nice feature that we do see used quite often that customers seem to really enjoy. So let's close out of here and let's just go ahead and actually open this file now. All right. So this is our kitchen view here. And so there's a variety of things that we'll be able to see here, but I wanted to point out a couple of things. So this properties button down here, right? This is going to be a properties pane that pops out. And what's cool about these representations or these models is that they are actually, this is live Revit data. This is your model, right? It's a visualizer in a sense, but all of this data is actually here. So if we click on the floor, for example, you'll see it's going to highlight the entire floor. And if we go on the right side here and we scroll down, you'll actually find real live information from Revit. You're going to find your area, your volume, all that, sort of information from Revit itself. Click on a window, it'll do the same thing. It'll be a window panel. And so that's a really nice little tool that we see used quite often here, as I mentioned. All right, let's see here. Let's find something to measure. So let's use this frame here. So next thing I'm going to point out is the ability to measure that exists here. So since this is a live model, like I mentioned, or a live representation of the model, you'll be able to use your points here, your midpoints, things of that nature. All of that is going to be live here. So we can measure, we can grab an endpoint, a midpoint, and we can see the distance here, 3.1 feet. And, again, all live data here. You can measure angles as well. You can measure distances. And, again, a feature that we see used quite often and that a lot of people really seem to enjoy. All right. Now, on the left side here, we can see we have a Sheets and Views button, right? And so here we have listed under 3D our different views that we've chosen to upload here. These views are the ones that are selected from Revit. I'm going to show you where you have those published settings on the Revit side a little bit later in the demonstration. But for now, just so you know, these are selected in Revit. There's many more views that exist in this project, but these are the ones that were chosen to be published. And same goes for the sheets. So we have all these sheets here. These are just the ones that were chosen to bring over here. So let's go ahead and click on this level 1 sheet. And I want to go ahead and jump in here and show you guys a couple of things here. So one question that does come up is about marking up, right? So if you wanted to go ahead and put a revision cloud here, for example, you could do this for a call out, for text, anything like that. You would go ahead and use the tool, do what you'd like to do here. And one thing that's pretty cool here is that you see this, it says publish here. This is a publish button. Tells you that this is published, meaning that anybody who opens this model through the viewer on the Construction Cloud browser version here, the website, will see this markup. But what you can also do, if you want it just to be something for yourself, you're doing something in progress, you don't want other people to see it yet, if you click that publish button, it becomes unpublish, and then you see it kind of goes to this darker red, which tells you only you can see it. So that's a nice tool as well. See, that's one of the very few things that you can actually delete and it doesn't keep track of. All right, and another item that I'm going to point out here is issues. So if we click issues here, and let's say we spotted a certain design issue here. So we'll go here, we'll look for design, we'll drop a pin here. And so what you can do here is you can add information. So you can say, wrong material here, for example. We can say, okay. You can have a status for this. You can define the type, description. You can assign this to an individual or to a company or to a role, just like the permissions that we had discussed earlier. So let's go ahead and assign that to the DDS-CAD company here as a whole. You can add watchers as well who are not necessarily assigned to this, but have a vested interest in this design issue being resolved, let's say. You can put a due date, a start date, root causes, and then so in here you can add comments, you can add attachments as well. And so this is an interesting thing here. Now, there is again an unpublish and a publish button. So you see here, successfully unpublished, click it again, successfully published. So again, this is whether it's visible for everybody, just for you. And we have an activity log here that keeps track of all those changes that are being made as well. All right. So that's another way to keep track of any of those sorts of changes that need to be dealt with as well. All right. Okay, so let us back out of here. And I want to point out just a couple more things here before we jump over to the design collaboration side of things. All right, so let's go to the settings. And I'm going to point out here this, the project tab here is very similar to what we saw in the project admin area, but this is not. So as many of you may know, Revit is version specific. And so, if you're working on a project in version 2019, you're going to want to be collaborating with, everybody's got to be on the same version of Revit. When you're linking things of all that nature, you want to make sure everything is consistent. And so, that's fine in most cases, not a problem. But what happens if for whatever reason, the project needs to move to a newer version of Revit? So typically you're going to have to go through your entire project file by file and upgrade each of those, which takes a while. You may run into issues. Things may not work the way that they should be working. And so that can definitely be a problem. So what was done here basically is they've built in a functionality where there is actually the ability here. Let's say this says Revit 2019 is current version. It'll give you the option to move to any version ahead of that. So, if it was 19, it'll give you 20, 21, 22, 23 as options. You can actually test that upgrade to make sure everything is going to work correctly before you actually commit to doing it. And then once that's done, everybody, next time will open that correct version of Revit and they'll see that project. So that again saves a lot of time and a lot of effort, and we see a lot of positivity behind that feature as well in terms of what our customers feel about it. All right, and I'm going to show you one more thing here actually that I just remembered here. So another feature that was requested for a while and finally showed up here is the ability to share folders or individual files with individuals who are not in this platform, who don't have access to this platform. And so in order to do that, there's a couple steps that need to happen first. So in your files area here under docs, you're going to have to go to your settings, advanced settings, and then under advanced settings, you're going to see this public links to sheets and files. So you need to enable this, and you can set basically the expiration length here initially. This is something that you can modify on a case by case, but this is kind of your default, if you will. Okay, so once these changes have been done, and let's say we wanted to share this architecture file, or folder rather, you would click on the three dots, you would click share. You'll have this anyone with a link button. You can have an expiration that you can set here. You can actually set this so that it will show either just the, well, it's not going to work here. It only works if you're doing this on individual files themselves. But whether you want them to only see the version at the time that you've shared the link with them, or whether you want them to see the latest version. So if you publish tomorrow after you sent the link today, and they check it the day after tomorrow, they'll see that latest publish at that time. And so you can send that out via email right here, or you can just grab the link and copy the link into an email, for example, to send over to them. So that's a tool that we've seen a lot of requests for recently, and we're happy to see that it's here. And it's been around for a little while, but they've recently changed it and made it a little bit more friendly and given you some more options and choices there. All right, so let's go back over here, and we're going to jump to the design collaboration section now. And so what this section does is it basically allows users to collaborate on a central model in the cloud from anywhere, as long as they have an internet connection, right? So just the same as you'd work on a central model in your server in the office, this would be similar, but the model is stored in the cloud instead, and you can technically work from anywhere as long as you have the correct license for that, as long as you have an internet connection. So basically, this collaborative working environment will allow you, to use a variety of different workflows to link with other models, and basically, based on those workflows, you can collaborate differently in a variety of different ways, which we're going to go over in a moment, with other individuals as well who are working with you. So before diving into this a little bit more, I'm going to go over a couple things that do often confuse a lot of our users, let's say. And so I'm going to jump back over and try not to confuse you more, but hopefully to clear up some of these confusions, let's say. So one thing that often we get asked is, or one question that initially comes up quite often is, we've published our Revit model to the cloud and we're working on it and we're syncing and we're making changes, but we're not seeing those changes on the browser side, right? On the website side that we were just looking at. And the reason for that is because you'll basically do your initial upload here, which again is maybe not super straightforward, and we are going to cover that in just a couple of minutes, so bear with me on that. But that initial one is created, it's going to go to a version 2. And then as you continue to sync and work on your work in progress file, when you publish, again, is when that next version is going to go to the cloud. And so the reason for this is because what you're seeing on that website is what's called the construction cloud, where you're actually working on that model live and making changes and syncing with Central and all of that is not actually in the construction cloud. It's kind of like a parallel server, which I refer to as the working Revit cloud server. And so that's going to be where your working model lives. And so copies are only brought over from that working model to the construction cloud when a publish is done from Revit. Again, we've talked about publish a couple of times here today. We are going to go over what that process actually looks like when we get to Revit in just a few minutes, but I did want to mention that here as well. Okay, so that's a very common question that comes up here. All right, another rather confusing topic that often comes up is the 3 collaboration methods. I'm going to try to make this as clear as possible, but again, it's a somewhat confusing topic that took me quite a while to wrap my head around. So if you do have questions or anything like that after the webinar, definitely feel free to reach out to us. But basically, there's 3 ways to collaborate with other individuals. So the first way is live linking, right? This is what you may be accustomed to in your office. You link directly to the working Revit model. And basically, in this case, you're gonna interact directly with that working model from the other team. Now that's good because you're gonna see all the latest changes, but it's not so good because there's really no control from the team sharing or from you, the team, consuming those changes for when you're ready to see those changes. And so sorry about that. So the way around that is to use one of the controlled linking methods or the shared linking method. Those are the 2 other options. So the shared linking method basically adds one more step there where the team who's made those changes has to decide when they're ready for the rest of the collaborators to see those changes, at which point they're going to share those changes using a shared package. We're going to go over this workflow in a moment, so don't worry too much if it's not making sense just yet. And then basically what that's going to do is it's going to put a copy of that latest published file into a certain folder called the shared folder, and that's where the other teams are going to be linking from. And so as soon as they create that shared package, the other teams will now see those latest changes. So that's basically, I as the creator, I'm saying when you're going to be seeing those changes as the consumer. And the next level beyond that is the controlled linking method, or the consume method, where the consumer, so switching roles here to the person who's seeing those latest changes, I can decide when I'm ready to receive those latest changes from the other group. So after the other group shares, I'm in the middle of making some changes. I'm not ready to see those latest changes from them yet. So in this case, you'll be able to go in and decide when you're ready to consume those changes. You'll click a consume button. It will update those files in yet another folder automatically that you'll be linking from in that case. And so basically it all is about where you're linking from. That's really going to be the big thing here. You can see a little visual representation here. So for live linking, you're gonna link directly from that work in progress folder. For the shared method, you're gonna share the package, right? From the work in progress, you're gonna share, it's gonna copy to the shared folder, and that's where you link from. And for the consumed method, you're gonna consume the package, then it's gonna be copied to your own consumed folder, and that's where you link from. Again, we're gonna go over this in just a minute. I know it's a little confusing. I'm gonna show you one more slide here just to confuse things a little bit more. So again, live linking, your architecture group will link directly to the working file in the structure folder. For the shared linking or shared method, the architectural is going to share, which is this copy step, into this shared folder architecture. And so the mechanical links to here. And then again, mechanical will share. It'll end up in the mechanical folder in the shared structure. And that's where the architect will link from as well. And then the final step, to confuse things just a little more, is this controlled linking or consume method, where basically all of what we just talked about happens, but the consumer needs to go in and say, I'm ready to consume those changes. And then, for example, here, if the architect is the consumer, they click, I'm ready to consume. In their own folder, there will be a consume folder, and that's where the mechanical model will be copied from and into. And so you'll be linking from this location. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and jump back here, and let's see if I can either help clear this up or make it a little bit worse. Let's see what happens here. So for shared linking, essentially what we're going to do is go ahead and create a shared package. So again, we're in the design collaboration section. We see the architecture team is the one that we are here now. If we click these three dots, we can see what's called the swim lanes up here. We can expand this a little further so we can see all of the teams that exist. We're going to talk about team creation in just a little while. And so what I'm going to do here is, as the architect, right? And let me clarify, as an admin here, I have the ability to emulate any of these teams by clicking on them. Typically, you would not be able to go in and emulate another team. You would just be your own. But so as the architect here, we're going to go ahead and click this button here. It says create a new package. It's this plus symbol at the end. When we do that, we're going to see here our working set or our working model. We're going to open our sets here, and this is where you're actually going to choose what sets to include in your publish, or in your share rather. And so let's choose this one. We'll say save. And then so this is that share button that we talked about, right? So let's go ahead and click share. Share. And so now that share is in progress. You see here a filled in blue dot. Okay, that means we just made that share. This is a timeline, by the way, just so you're all aware. You can see other share packages that have been prepared by other groups here, just so you're aware. So this is an unconsumed package. This is multiple packages there as well. But essentially, like I said, we create that share package. Once that happens, let's go back to docs, and I'm just going to show you what that actually did. So under the shared folder here, under architecture, we should see that this was last updated. And it does sometimes take a little bit of time before we'll see those latest changes. But this will pretty soon here update, and it should show us that it was updated today. Again, it's not updating yet. Or you know what, actually, it's the fact that we have not made any more recent changes. But this is where it will show up, essentially. I'm resharing something that I've already shared, so it's not going to show us an updated date here. But that is where you would see the shared model. And so in that case, this is where you would be linking from as a consumer of this file. Now, going back to design collaboration, and again, we're going to open our swim lanes, and let's say we want to be the MEP here, okay? And so as the MEP, I can see, oh, look, all of these open circles, these are unconsumed packages. We can say, okay, I want to consume this latest package from the architectural group. So I click on it. I'll actually be able to click on the set here, and I can actually take a look at that model live and see maybe some of those changes compared to prior versions, that sort of thing. And when I'm ready, I can go ahead and click Consume right here. We're going to go ahead and click Consume. Again, this is going to take a couple minutes. It's going to grab the information from the package. You see it filled that circle. That's the indicator of a consumed package. And if we go to Docs, let's see if this one actually did work for us. We go to MEP. We go to Consumed. Then in our Consume, we see an architectural folder here, and you see this model, October 25th. That should say like 245. And here it is. So here's the model. This is where it's copied to. And from the MEP perspective, this is where I would link to if I wanted to use that linking methodology. Okay. Let's jump back again to the design collaboration section. I'm going to point out a couple more little things here. So one more thing I want to point out, you do have the ability here to, let me jump back to the architectural view. You do have the ability to publish directly from up here as well. So if you're, if you have somebody, for example, who is not a Revit user, but there's some sort of admin, they want to have the ability to go ahead and come in here and publish on a regular basis for us without having the Revit access, they can do that from here by clicking this Publish Latest button. Additionally, you can schedule a publish. I believe weekly is the kind of the repetition that is typically used on this front. So you can set a day of the week and a certain time, and automatically things will be published. And so we do see that used quite a bit. We see, at the end of a week, a lot of these publishes will happen. Ideally, try not to do those at what you think might be like a peak time, like end of day on Friday, because that's probably, like you think, going to be the busiest time. And things are going to go a little bit slower. But again, not a problem. That works just fine as well. I did have one more slide I wanted to point out here for you. So I'm not going to go over each of these, but you can see some of those symbols we just saw: the empty circle, the dotted empty circle, the partially filled circle. If you want, go ahead and take a screenshot of this. And again, this video will be available pretty soon for you guys here right after the presentation. But these are just some of this is like a legend of those symbols. So go ahead and take a look at those. Right. All right. So back to Revit, or I'm sorry, back to the Construction Cloud here. I'm going to talk about just 2 or 3 more little things. All right, so let's go to our settings. And so here we see our list of teams. So let's point out just a couple of things here. So our shared folder location, we can modify that here if we need to. I don't recommend that. I recommend using the existing one. Once the changes have started to be made, definitely I wouldn't change things around too much because that could cause issues in your workflow. As far as creating teams, you can go ahead and create teams here. You can change the names. These include all folders means everything within that teams folder. We saw, remember, in the docs view, we had the architectural one, we had the MEP one, we had the structural one. So this means that any file in there is eligible for this, in essence. Okay, from there, on the right side, what we can see here is the members, right? So if we needed to add a member, for example, we could click in here. And I've actually already done it here. You can do this as well by company, for example, or individual, or by role, like we've talked about in the past. So that's a nice tool to use as well. And again, so we already have DDS here as the company. And so anybody who's added will automatically have that access as well. Okay. All right, one last note, and then I'm going to jump over to Revit. Now we're getting a little tight on time here. So in this manage area, we have this main model option. Now, this main model, basically what this is, obviously we've got a bunch of different models happening here from different disciplines, different things like that. But so basically from here, you'll be able to set the model where levels, view names, all that kind of thing is actually grabbed from, and then that'll be used consistently across all your models from the web browser side of things. If you don't choose a model here, which we could choose one here, if we don't, it should default to the whatever is the largest model in your project, as I've understood it. Okay, so just so you're all aware that that is the case there. All right, so let's jump over to Revit, and we're gonna, kind of do some more hands-on stuff here. So on the Revit side, the first thing I want to talk about is how to properly upload a document for collaboration in the cloud. This is one of the most common questions that we run into on this side of things. It's, you might assume that you can just upload a file directly from the web browser, or even from the desktop connector, I'm sorry. But those will just go up in there as local files, not as central models. And so you won't actually see those in the typical way that you'd open central models from Revit. So right here, I just have a very simple, just a couple lines that I drew here, a little structure. And so basically what you'll do once you have that done is you'll go ahead and click on the Collaborate tab up here. And you're gonna go ahead and click the Collaborate button. Now, in some versions of Revit, this will say Collaborate in the cloud, and some it'll just say Collaborate. So you're gonna click Collaborate. You're gonna choose in the cloud, or in some versions of Revit, it's in document management or BIM document management or BIM 360. There's various terminology, but it's the one that's not within your network, basically. And so we'll click OK. This is gonna pop up and allow us to choose the location where we're saving. So sample project 2023, project files, architecture, let's say, and let's just throw it right here. So we'll say save. Again, hopefully this goes smoothly. We are doing this live and you never really know with this stuff, but looks like we're progressing. Again, it does take a couple seconds, but there you go. So this is now live in the cloud side of things. And so this is that initial publish that we talked about a little bit earlier. Okay, so as far as opening a model, a Revit model successfully, or a Cloud Workshare model, in your recents area, you can see these central model icons that have a little cloud next to them. It may be a little hard to see. Those are cloud-based, so you'll know you could open them from there. But the best way to do it is to go down here to this Autodesk Docs button. Again, in some cases that says BIM 360 instead, or Autodesk Docs, but that's all the same there. This is where you choose your project up here. And so we'll go to that sample project. We'll go to project files, architecture. And you see this is the one we just uploaded. This is the one that we have not yet uploaded, or that we looked at earlier, I'm sorry. So let's click on that. Now this will take a couple seconds to open. Remember, this is basically updating the local version of the file on your computer. This is just like when you're working on a cloud model locally, in your server. So this is the same view that we were looking at earlier. I wanted to point out a couple of things. So let's go ahead and look at how we would link in this scenario. So we go to manage links. Should be very similar to what you're used to. You would say add. And so this is going to open up this external references area that's going to look directly into this project. You can verify that by clicking here, and you'll see it says external resources, Autodesk Docs, sample project 2023. And so you can go here, and so let's go ahead and link one of those structural models. So we'll click on it here. You have your same typical options down here. We're going to say open. And so this is going to be if you wanted to link directly for like that live consumption that we talked about. Now, when you do this, you'll see those changes as soon as they're synced, basically. So there's not even a need to publish. The next option that we had discussed, and I'll just show you all three right here real quick. So we can go ahead and say add. We'll go to project files. We will go to shared, and this is for that shared method instead. You see if I have a structural model here, I do. We'll choose that one. And then it's once we, let's ignore that. Okay, so let's take a look here. You can see this is going directly from project files, structural. This is live linking, right? So let's remove that one. Now we'll add it again from that location. It wasn't liking that I was relinking basically the same file from somewhere else. Structure, open. And so see this one linked, and if you can see here in the path, it's shared, then structural. right? Other important fact, it says cloud over here, so you can tell it's from the cloud, and it says Autodesk Docs here at the beginning of your path, which again tells you the same thing, that it is from where it should be. And then the last method that we had talked about is going to be, so from our own architectural folder, in the consumed folder, in the structural folder, we have that file here as well. And again, that's because we went through that whole workflow. Otherwise, it wouldn't show up in some of those places if we wouldn't have pushed it through using the workflow that we talked about prior. So again here, so architecture, consumed, structural, and there's your file. Okay. All right, so let's say okay here. Then let's talk about, let's go back to Collaborate. So this is those published settings that I mentioned to you earlier. This is where you can actually choose what's included in your sets. So these are your sets that are up here. You can go through and just look up, all views, for example, and you can go ahead and add whatever you need to here. You can add and remove as needed. And you can say save and close. We can go ahead and do a sync like you might be used to. This may look a little bit differently, but it should be doing the same thing. It's going to upload the latest changes, bring down the latest changes, and update your local. Okay. And so from there, let's see, what do we want to talk about next? So let's go back actually to this recents area and let's refresh here. And so as far as publishing goes, we can publish through the web browser in that area that we had seen. But the alternative is, so here, this is the file that we were just uploading. You see here it says update available. That means the latest version has not yet been published. So let's go ahead and click on the three dots here, and we can see here there's a publish latest button. So we'll go ahead and do that. We'll publish. And so that's going to go ahead and process the publish. Now, again, this does take a little bit of time, but this will actually go ahead and publish over. And in the next couple of minutes, if we go back to our docs area, we should hopefully see a version 9. I don't know if we're going to see it so quick. Yeah, so it's version 9. It's still processing, but it is on its way there. Okay. All right, so I think that covers. PowerPoint wants to come back for me. Bear with me here. All right, so I think that covers everything. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Raquel for questions.
Wow, thank you, Alan. Great presentation, lots of information, tips and tricks. I hope that it was beneficial for all our attendees. Now we're going to jump into questions. We have a few questions. We have very little time. Let's see if we can cover them. So one of the questions I see in the chat box, and keep writing your questions. If we don't have time to cover them, we will address them by sending you an email with the answer later on. So don't be shy, keep sending questions. One of the questions is, why don't you see a model that you would expect to see in the Revit opener?
Okay, so that could be a couple of different things. So in that Revit opening view, so if you're not seeing a model there, the most typical reasons are either you don't have permissions, so the permissions are not set for you to have visibility or the correct type of permissions for that file. You don't have the proper license assigned, so that BIM Collaborate Pro license may not be assigned correctly. You are opening, or you're opening the wrong version of Revit. So you remember these versions or these files are specific to, or these projects rather, are specific to certain versions of Revit. So if you're opening a 2019 project and you're opening 2020, you're not going to see that 2019 project. So that's definitely a possibility there.
All right, great. Thank you, Alan. Okay, I see another question. How much storage do we have?
Yeah, okay. So as far as storage goes, basically you'll have unlimited number of projects and unlimited storage in each of those projects on the cloud. So unlimited storage at the time, as of now at least.
Sounds really good. Okay, now another question. What is the benefit of using the consume folder?
Okay, so that consumed method is, again, just one more level of control. Basically, in that scenario, the consumer, so the person seeing those changes from the other team, can decide, you know what, I'm in the middle of making some changes based on the prior changes. I don't want to see those latest changes yet. It's just going to confuse things. It's just going to confuse things, with what we're doing. So I'd rather wait. And when I'm ready to see those changes, I can go ahead and and say, let's go ahead and consume. And then you'll see those changes. So it just gives you that extra level of control not to have to see those changes right away.
I see. Thank you. The next question is, what are the advantages to not live linking model from the other disciplines?
Okay, so that's actually a really good question that I should have covered, but I didn't. One of the biggest benefits there is privacy or control. So if you have a scenario where you have a couple of different consultants and you don't want the consultants to directly see the working models and the working files of the other group, but rather you only want them to see kind of what's ready for their consumption, you can basically set this up so that they only have visibility to like their own folder, let's say, in the docs area and the shared folder, but not anybody else's working files. So that's where we've seen a big advantage on that front, just so the other, so there's no need for any of that. The additional to that is just, like I said, that extra level of control where other groups, you just may not be ready to share those latest changes with the other team. You may still be reviewing, or you may still be deciding if that's all going to fly. And so that gives you that level of control to be able to not show those changes just yet, or not consume just yet.
Okay. The next question is, can this program be linked to coordination during construction phase?
So there is a way to do that. Included in the BIM Collaborate Pro license, there is actually a model coordination license, which will actually automatically allow you to run clash detection on the models on the design side. As far as the construction phase specifically, that may get into another module that needs to be purchased, maybe on the build side. But there are other modules that are built around that construction phase of things. But we can definitely connect after this about that. If you'd like, give us a call or shoot us an email at info@ddscad.com, and we'd definitely be happy to discuss that one further.
Sounds great. We have another question. Can I collaborate with another company with my files on my hub projects and their files on their own home hub project? So I'm not sure if the question.
So as of now, there is no way to collaborate from one hub to another. Essentially, what it would have to be is one company would have to host the project, and the other company would need to be invited to that project. Yeah, I mean, I would love to assume that in the future there will be some sort of piece that comes into play that allows that, but as of now, it's just everything on a single hub.
Okay. We have more questions, but do we have time for maybe a couple more? One more?
Yeah. Well, if
One more.
anybody, like I said, if anybody does need to jump off, we appreciate you being here, and if you're registered for the webinar, this link will be sent out to you in the next hour or so, and it will be available on our YouTube channel and our website within a couple hours as well. So you can always check out the rest of the questions there. But I can keep going if you can.
Thank you, Alan, for saying that. I just have to answer a couple of questions about our recording. Yes. The last one, let's do the last question, and we can connect with the other ones later on. So the last question is, won't it take too long to open a file every time from the cloud?
Yeah, so that's another one we do get quite often. As I mentioned, the first time you open the file is always going to take a little bit longer, but every time after that, it really should only be bringing down the latest changes and pushing up your latest changes. So, you have a local version of that model that will exist unless you're clearing your collaboration cache. So it's not loading the whole thing. So that's something important to keep in mind. So in a lot of cases, actually, compared to like VPNing to an office network and things like that, we do actually see that this is the faster method in many cases.
Good. Okay, thank you. I was browsing through the questions, and this one caught my attention, so let's give it a little minute to it. because I've seen this asked many times. Can we share one license of BIM Collaborate Pro for various members of our team to collaborate on projects hosted by other teams?
Okay, so the answer for that one would be no. So these licenses really are meant to be used by an individual user, and that individual user needs to also have a license of Revit assigned to that same individual user. So, you know, basically, there's really no way to do that. That kind of defeats the purpose. The idea with the licenses here is that they are one license per user, and so that's how they're set to work. We've been asked the question many times. There's really no great way to do that. It kind of tries to skirt the licensing agreement and things like that, and just to avoid any hot water, definitely not worth the the risk there, I think.
All right, so we have many questions more, Alan, but we are short in time, so we're gonna address that separately, directly, and we're gonna jump to the last conclusion. Thank you, everybody, for being with us. This has been great. I hope that everybody benefit from all the information, tips, and tricks shared today. We wanted to let you know that our blog is live. You can always check our knowledge center. That would be ddscat.com, services, knowledge center, Autodesk, and you will have a lot of information there of different postings that we update all the time. We also have Autodesk training available in AutoCAD, Revit, and other disciplines. So please let us know if you are interested or you need it. And you can always send us an email at info@ddscat.com or call us for additional information. Thank you, everybody, for your time today. It's been a great pleasure, and have a great day, everybody. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Raquel. Bye-bye.
Bye.